Hello guys, how's it going today? We're making a video on some minimum system requirements for some new and upcoming games that look crazy to run. So we're going to be starting off with Hogwarts Legacy. So once this loads, alright, we'll go down here. So these just got updated the other day, I believe. So the minimum CPU required is going to be an i5-8400, that's 6 cores, 6 threads, or an AMD Ryzen 5 2600, which is 6 core, 12 threads. These are 2018 and newer, I believe. I believe 8th gen around 2018. And then for the recommended, it's an i7-8700, which I think is 6 cores, 12 threads, I believe. And then a Ryzen 5 3600, 6 core, 12 thread. RAM's pretty normal. It's at 8 gigs minimum, 16 gigs overall. For recommended is what most systems have, I would say at this point, at least gaming systems that I know of. 85 gigs of storage required, which is kind of a lot of storage. It's not too much though, like we've had a lot bigger games in the past. It runs on DX12 only, no DX11, but here's where it gets me, is the minimum is a 1070, GTX 1070, or an AMD RX Vega 56. So, that's an 8 gig card. I would say it's a pretty solid card for a lot of games. So it's this game's minimum, Hogwarts Legacy. And on top of that, this is for 1080p, 60 FPS, low quality, and it's upscaled. It's not even native 1080p. It's performance upscaling 1080p. So yeah, 1070, 60 frames on upscaled 1080p, not even native. That's kind of crazy to me, at least, I think, because 1070 can run pretty much any game at 120 frames on low settings, I believe. Honestly, most modern games. But moving over to the recommended side of things is a 1080 Ti, right here, 1080 Ti for the recommended, or a 5700 XT. I don't know if that's really a fair comparison. I think the 5700 XT falls behind a little bit, but that's alright. So, looking at this is 1080p, 60 FPS, high quality, but still upscaled. Upscaled 1080. It's not even native 1080p, 60 FPS with a 1080 Ti. So, my fear is that we're going to be getting into the territory of 3070, 3080, 6700 XT, 6800 XT, and even above that. Like, if you're trying to run 1440p native, like a lot of people do, it's going to be a tough game to run, especially if you're running it non-upscaled. It seems like this game's going to be kind of a big one to run. It's going to be pretty big. I think it looks pretty cool, though. I'm not going to lie. Like, this would totally be a game I would play. I just hope people's PCs are ready. So, moving on to our second game and last game. I looked for games for like 10 minutes through this new and upcoming games for like high-spec games. And the only other game that I came across really high specs was Skull and Bones. It looks like it's an Ubisoft game that's coming out in a few months. So the release date for Hogwarts Legacy is February. This is actually November of this year. The next one's February 2023 for Hogwarts, sorry. Getting things mixed up. Skull and Bones, November this year. It's going to be minimum in i7 4790. Okay, so that's not as high. But Ryzen 5 1600, okay. But recommended is actually higher than Hogwarts Legacy, and that's an i7 8700K, so that's K series unlocked, so you can overclock until Ryzen 5 3600. Alright, it says 8GB dual channel is minimum, 16GB dual channel is recommended, 65 gigs SSD. Okay, but then we look at the graphics, and this is a 1060 6GB and an RX 570 8GB for minimum. So that's getting up there. That's close to a 1070 range. It's a little bit less, obviously. Going over here, 2070 for recommended, along with a 5700 XT. And that does not say what resolution or frame rate to expect, but just by the recommended settings, I would say this is probably going to run close to how like Halo Infinite runs with its minimum and recommended system requirements. So yeah, I think that's going to be about it for today's video, guys. I hope you enjoyed, I hope you learned something, and I hope your PCs are ready for the new games that are going to be coming out here pretty quickly.